So yeah, I'm optimistic that I'll get, if not, you know, I'm 35 as well, so even before having a baby, I noticed differences in my body in my early 30s compared to my early 20s. So, you know, I had to accept a long time ago that I needed to adapt and adjust my training based on what my body could do, and so this is just yet another version of that.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the thought process after you got injured? You said that you had to do some soul searching there.
Yeah.
Can you just take us through that and how you came to the decision?
Yeah, it was tough. I took 2 weeks after, 2 months after having my baby of just, you know, walking and exercising, but like, you know, sort of core exercises and movement. But then once I hit that 8 weeks postpartum, started up training again and was trying to progress, in retrospect, too quickly to be in shape sooner than I should have. And yeah, that first month or two of training, especially when I had to start getting into workouts, and I was so fatigued and exhausted from lack of sleep and from breastfeeding that I was just like dark circles under my eyes and just, you know, struggling with my identity as well. I think it's tough for every professional athlete when they get further on into their career and they start to look ahead and wonder, like, you know, how much do I have left? And who am I without sport? And for me, I was going through that as well as, like, will I ever be the same? I love my daughter, but I loved my life before as well. So it's just a lot of things that you have to kind of process. But I think, you know, for me, it was just kind of a one foot in front of the other. At the beginning, more like a zombie of just like, okay, just try to go. And then I started to kind of, like, you know, get more sleep, and I started to feel more healthy. And so I'd say the last few months have been really beautiful in terms of, like, my body is cooperating. I'm in a better routine with my daughter and my family, and I can just, you know, focus on quality now instead of just trying to get back to a baseline. I feel like I can start building, and I've always loved that part of that aspect of being a professional athlete.
Can you put your finger on a turning point, maybe, like where things really started to go bad?
Go bad?
Go better.
Oh, go better. I noticed physically at the 1 year mark, just like naturally, even though I was still breastfeeding, it just seemed like naturally my hormones started to shift back more towards normal. My body just started to function in a more predictable way, or at least predictable for me, for the former athlete, or the athlete that I once was. So yeah, I'd say it was definitely at that year mark I felt the biggest change, but probably also 6 to 9 months once my daughter started eating solid foods and she wasn't so reliant on me, then, you know, I could, like, I wasn't having to give out as much of myself and could start to recover more.
Did Nike support you throughout your entire childbirth and pregnancy?
I was never reduced. I was never suspended. You know, I felt compelled to get back into fitness quicker than like if I had known that if for my pregnancy there had been the new kind of contract aspects, that would have been a huge stress relief. So there wasn't anything like that for me to rely on, and so I did my best on my end to read very thoroughly through my contract and try to be the best representative of the company that I could be, and fulfill my contract as much as possible, because you know, I really am grateful for I'm really grateful to have a contract, to be able to have this life and career of a professional athlete, but I'm really happy that there is starting to be more kind of conversation and clarification about you know, what a mother who's also an athlete can expect, because I think that, you know, if I could do it all again, having that time frame where I would know that I was protected rather than like hoping I'd be protected would, I could have done things maybe a little bit better, a little bit differently.
What did you make of the 1500 final at Worlds with the fast times, losing your American record?
I know, I was like both, I was super like just blown away by how deep that field was. there was, of course, a part of me that was jealous because pretty much every final I've ever been in was like slow, 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 and then like blazing fast the last 800. So there was the jealous part of me that I was like trying to push down, that was like, oh, I wish I could have been at my best fitness in a race like that, just to know what I could have done. Like, I'm not saying I would have been at the top of that field, but it would have been so cool to come away with that knowledge. But yeah, I watched the race and I saw the results and I was like, whoa. It was really, I mean, so many times in Doha were just, whoa.
Yeah. And what were your thoughts on the Oregon project being shuttered? Do you think that was the right decision?
I think that Alberto and the Oregon project were so closely tied that for my own personal feeling was that moving forward there would be too much conversation around, like, anytime you search for that group, the first things that would have come up would have been this controversy, and I think that does a disservice to the athletes who weren't a part of that time period that has been investigated and that have tried so hard to do things the right way, and so yes, it was sad because it's such an iconic part of our sport, but it's become such a controversial one that, to me, it made sense. There's still a bit of sadness that it has come to an end, but I'm still with Pete. The athletes that are training with him, we all, we're still moving ahead, like nothing, like we would have anyway. Obviously, there's been a change in that the head coach, Alberto, is no longer around, but for me, especially living in San Francisco, like my daily life hasn't really been impacted. It's more of just the frustration of my name being associated with something that's I've tried so hard to fight against my whole career, to fight against cheating, but obviously I get drawn into it.
When did Pete take over your coaching?
So it was not ever I would say it was like a gradual process and then a pretty clear shift. So he came onto the Oregon project in 2013, just before I did. And so initially Alberto would be kind of the main point person and Pete would be more of an assistant. And then the first big shift really started in 2015 when this whole controversy began, and Alberto sort of had to, he had to step away for a while to figure out how he was going to respond, and Pete really stepped up to the plate. So he was pretty much my only point of contact in 2015 leading up to my American record. And then in 2016, I just continued to gravitate more towards Pete because his approach towards training is more cohesive with mine, like the way that he's very good at keeping track of what I've done and what needs to be cycled back in. And with middle distance training, you have to work on so many different energy systems. He's really good at making sure to touch on all of those. And he's also, like, the way he communicates is one that I can just understand better. So I just naturally gravitated towards him because of that. And it was after the Olympics in Rio in the fall of 2016 that it became more of a separation where I was with him and Sifan was with Alberto. But that's not to say that Alberto wasn't, like, it was an amicable, it wasn't even like a parting, like we all shared the same training room where we get massages and stuff at Nike, and but it was just more of a gravitation towards a coach that I related to better. And then I moved back to San Francisco when I got pregnant, and Pete has been my only real point of contact for some time. So that's the long-winded way of saying that it was kind of a gradual evolution and then a pretty clear shift.
Yeah.
How does that work? Does Pete send you a program at the beginning of every week?
Yeah, it's not ideal. It was much better to have to be in Portland with the group. But when I decided to move home in 2017, there weren't really any other women for me to train with. There's Jordan, but she was doing such longer distances, and Sifan, she did her own thing. So my husband had been helping me train mostly, and I always knew I wanted to be back home in San Francisco where my family is. So when I found out I was pregnant in the fall of 2017, it made sense to move back. And luckily for me, he has always been really supportive of, he knew that I would want to have a family. He has a son of his own, and so he was completely on board and 100% supportive of me. Wasn't necessarily planned for me to get pregnant, but we knew that was something that I was hoping for. And yeah, so we talk. He sends me workouts for maybe like 1 to 2 workouts out, just kind of sketch out for the week. We connect after every workout. Sometimes it's a text, sometimes it's a call. And then, I talk to him on the phone when I need more details. My first professional coach, John Cook, was also a long distance relationship, and while not ideal, because it's always better to have a coach's eyes on you, I learned how to kind of just be professional about this career and how to get my work done. And so I don't think that Pete ever doubts that I'm going to go and do what he tells me I need to do. So then it's just a matter of communication. And in the Bay Area, luckily, I have a good team of people around me that I can train with. And so that's been the biggest part, is just finding people to help push me in sessions. It's irritating. I think I'm grateful that I'm 35 now, and when the accusations first came out in 2015, it was, I was newer to the team, but it was also just a lot more hurtful, especially because, Steve Magnus had, when my husband spoke to him before I joined the Oregon Project, he said that, while Alberto's might be a strong, difficult personality, there wasn't anything that he was suspicious of, so I felt a little bit let down by that had happened, and so yeah, the main frustration for me is that, of course, because I'm a part of the Oregon Project, and there's an assumption that that I've done something wrong by a certain group of people, and I don't think I'm ever going to be able to convince them otherwise. Ultimately, people are going to make a decision, and it's their decision, and that's their right to make their decision based on what they have seen. The unfortunate part is that most people are making judgments based on a fraction of the information. And I wasn't on the team when those accusations happened. I don't know what went on. I know that for myself, as an athlete that was a member of the Oregon Project, there was never anything that I found suspicious. There was never anything that gave me pause. And so I have a clean conscience. And yeah, it's just disappointment that, that will be something that a certain group of people assume about me that